I wanted to talk today about censorship, culture, and identity. Um, Identity and culture essentially being two fractals of the same phenomena, where traits are essentially compiled into an entity, and then with culture, it is a broader and a collection of entities. That's why I refer to them as fractals. um, just like psychology and it's psychology and sociology essentially. But I'm using the terms that I am because those two fields are um, they they've become sort of corrupted by science, um, and by that I mean the paradigmatic science. The They have built into them a culture style which does not support the truth of it. They have too many assumptions, untested, unassessed assumptions about what things mean. So it becomes somewhat hazy. And then censorship, because the subtle and sort of overt prevention of people from thinking and speaking in ways they would like. Um, it affirms your identity and culture. So government agencies, religions, many institutional figures like these organizations, which may be they have their own agendas, which may not serve you or the people, the body which they represent. This is what we're seeing now. I mean, it's not a new thing, but I feel that most people are aware of the censorship phenomena with the modern digital age, where you can just observe very quickly what is right and wrong to say. You had this before the internet with just social behaviors. You would be rewarded or punished depending on what you believed or claimed to believe, how you behaved, etc. Narrative engineering is a big part of what these institutions do. So, from something like the CIA to uh, the priesthood in various religions, the media, everything sort of works together in our culture to do this. We have a completely captured culture. Um, there's not much allowance for organic growth and expression. What is pushed or compressed by the powers that be, and is it supports a certain narrative, certain narratives which are acceptable. And to some extent, this can be seen as a good. Like, you don't like, to play devil's advocate. You don't want people going around. You don't want it to be seen as acceptable to go around murdering, raping people, things like this. But that's not what we're talking about. That is often what will be that will often be the defense of these institutions for why they do these sort of things, pushing gun control narratives, whatever else they want to do, or like religious purity laws or the taboos. Um, Meanwhile, the people who actually design the rules are above the rules. They do not follow the things they give to the peasants, because you have to understand these political these power structures, these the lords of culture. If you consider a culture to be a little fiefdom, you're allowed to exist within it and plow their fields, so to speak. Um, they will coerce you, they will tax you, uh, and I'm saying this. I'm hoping that you have the consciousness to abstract what I'm saying as physical, historical things that we know to be done in a economic, political, land ownership kind of sphere into the realm of the mind and identity, because they're not the methods of controlling these things are not totally different. The techniques may differ just because you're operating on a more subtle terrain of cognitive space, imagination, belief. But if you understand the principles of ruling a people physically, you can very easily understand how to do so mentally. You can govern their psyches quite well, because you simply do not allow for voices in the sphere to arise that are outside of the bounds of what you deem desirable. Uh, you get things like morality emerging from these principles of governance. Morality exists as a form of governance, not as an actual. I mean, they'll say often, if they're in a religious context, that this is the will of God or something. Um, these are very useful tricks. It's the same thing as when you tell a child to be good for Santa. Um, I do believe there is a God, but it's not exactly how this works. You can look back on my work and see more of what I think about God. But if I get into that now, it'll become uh, too long of a video, and I don't want that. So, focusing on the narrative control that we're facing and how to overcome this, um, it requires a lot of things. Well, first you have to be able to get back your soul. Essentially, you have to fight. You have to fight for the freedom of your soul, your mind. We get the term mind and psyche. That means soul. Uh, it became a sort of mind materialist understanding far later, and that is a degradation, in my view, from uh, the spirit and soul. Those ideas were more coherent and more profound than what we now consider to be mind. Um, we have come to understand less due to these terms and the beliefs which allow them to prosper. So that sort of ties in. You're getting your language and your culture arranged, and this can be organic. Okay, so things can come up. It's just like a game theory mutational chance of culture. And what I was saying earlier, that I'm hoping you can abstract from the political, physical into mental realms. Uh, Meme and gene function very much in the same fractal um, relationship, to where you can take a lot of terms from genetics and put them into memetics. So ideas evolve and replicate and transfer and whatever, just like genes do. Uh, do not take these as literal exacts. Again, I'm hoping you have the awareness to abstract with grains of salt and whatnot. Do your own thinking. Um, these narrative control agencies, this worldview warfare, it limits the potential and makes limits the potential of individuals and cultures, making the world a worse place because there are sort of monopoly rulers of culture, what is acceptable to say, which are not the opinions of people generally. They are enforced doctrine that most people do not believe. You've seen this with the woke phenomena, but this is not new. Um, People are very upset about the new things, but they don't see that this is a recurring theme. And if you were to see that this is a recurring theme, you could study it and understand its mechanisms of transfer and prevent it. You could be free people. You could actually be free people. Um, but that requires a level of dedication most people are not desirous of. People would rather be controlled, generally. There are a few outliers. A few of those outliers are those who seek to control others, um, and they form a great relationship with those who want to be controlled. So you have the majority who are more, let's say, feminine, supportive characters who want to be somewhat told what to do, pushed down a rail of a prescribed belief and existence, their life path sort of set out for them. There are very rare few who want to be sovereign in themselves, and then there are some who are a bit more evil who want to just sort of control others as tyrannical figures. Um, that evil has its counterpoint in those who want to gain power and quote unquote control others, but more so that of a like a father figure, where they're actually guiding. They're not so much controlling as parentally guiding, so that people may express themselves more authentically than they otherwise would have. So if you see that your civilization, your culture, your the body of your nation or whatnot is unable to express itself, uh, a healthy leader would sort of help them along. But we instead see an inverse to that, where people are more suppressed. We have narcissistic rulers, essentially. I'd like to jump back to what I said about playing devil's advocate, that these institutions know that people will ordinarily behave in a socially acceptable way. They will form a social fabric which supports itself. So they do things like a mafia, where um, they essentially force you to pay them protection money to give them a position in society, um, where they can enforce their rules and tell you that this is for your own good. So people will normally not go out and shoot up a school or do things like this. Most of these cases are funded and incited by the very agencies which then do the laws uh, that you, they create these circumstances of radicalization so that they then have an excuse to pass laws and become more tyrannical. Uh, this is exceptionally problematic. Uh, it's been getting worse. I feel that I mean, because you know for certain that they are not actually there for harm prevention of any kind. If you look at the crime statistics, if you just understand the world to any depth, you see that these people are not interested in making life better for anyone except for themselves and their handlers. The people by basically for their own mafia. It's a good way to think about it. They have constructed this elaborate cabal of control to serve their own ends. Um, Meanwhile, we are starving, suffering, to whatever extent that may be. Some people have better lives than others. Some people escape suffering almost entirely. That's not really the point here. They go on this crusade against certain things in their narrative control and suppression and propaganda. And these are all kinds of abuses against the public. We allow this to happen. So it is essentially our fault that this occurs. We allow the taxation and tyranny that befalls us. We, the people, do not govern our nation. That's nonsense. Um, Maybe that could work. I don't know, but the people do not hold their government accountable at all. There is none of this. Um, your digital lives are controlled by organizations that can basically read any document you've ever made um, and manipulate the algorithms to show or not show it to other people at varying levels. It's not a complete dystopian uh, control mechanism yet. It's not yet. Palantir and whatnot. They're working towards it, and people mostly support this. They have a craving to be abused and give up their freedoms and the freedoms of those around them. This should not be allowed. What the governments and companies are doing with the coercion, whatnot, they should be using that power to prevent people from doing this. Like they should be using that coercive faculty, that tyranny, essentially, to prevent tyranny. that's that's sort of the only thing you can do. If you get the most power in the game, you should use that power in service of others. That's sort of how it should work, but it doesn't. And all who claim that uh, equality can save us or something that all people should be seen as equals and take up the same responsibilities, that can never work. This is part of the propaganda. Um, People are told to believe this and that we have fair systems and that things aren't rigged and all of, it's just to get you to believe things that are useful to them. What needs to happen is for um, essentially good people to grow in power and overthrow what currently exists, which would mean that essentially good people becoming dictators, which is hard to even think about. Um, but if you're not thinking about it, you're never going to ever see a change for the good. I'm sorry to all the liberals um, who think that freedom and equality will somehow give us benefits. But if you just look at the data, if you pay attention to the world, you see that in basically all metrics, things are getting worse. Um, and it could be easily prevented. We could easily have a great society, great world, whatnot. But we don't. And the reason we don't is an intentional uh, enslavement of humanity in a sort of suffering cult. It's very disappointing. It's disappointing to be a human today. Uh, we have all the means at our disposal to begin improving life for yourself and for others. Just gradually expanding in power and all kinds of. I guess you could just say power, um, because that's essentially all that is required. If I mean power and competence and awareness and all these things are considered power, shakti. Um, you have to direct this power toward a noble cause, as if you were as if you saw the entirety of humanity as a family. If you saw, well, it helps. It really helps if you become aware enough to know that you are everything. Then what you do is in service to that, unless you hate yourself. That's another problem. I'll not go into that. Uh, but everything is you, and you are responsible for all of it. And most of what every person believes is a psyop of some sort. Even like it's not new, like thousands of years, like people's religions, their materialism, democracy, and a lot of the modern chains that we have built for ourselves are all there to keep certain people in power and for you to feel that you're making a difference when you're not. Because if you believe that you're free, you'll never try to escape. If you believe that you're already powerful, you will not try to gain power. It's very sad, but this is the world we live in. We have been dominated by a cruel elite. And if you I would like to change this.